Young and the Restless. Kyle and Audra's steamy rebound fling sparks chaos. Word is spreading in Genoa City that Claire Grace Newman, Haley Aaron, called it quits with Kyle Abbott. This week, we'll have Audra Charles going back to Nate Hastings, Sean Dominic, to plead her case and beg him to take her back. However, I expect Nate is likely going to reject Audra Charles again this week and tell her, no dice. She betrayed him with Kyle and also with a whole pack of lies about Victor Newman, Eric Braden, and the funding for her company. So why would Nate ever get back with Audra? This week, we're going to see Kyle crushed because Claire broke up with him. His dad, Jack Abbott Peter Bergman, feels badly for Kyle, but he also understands where Claire is coming from because Kyle Abbott was her very first everything. First kiss, first boyfriend, first relationship, the first time she made love, everything. So, Jack thinks it's understandable that Claire needs some more life experience before she settles down. Meanwhile, Diane Jenkins, Susan Walters, found out that Claire broke up with her son by overhearing a conversation between Victoria Newman, Amelia Heinley, Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott, and Claire over at Society. Diane is not happy at all to hear that Claire broke up with Kyle, and she confronts Claire about breaking Kyle's heart. Young and the Restless. Diane spills Claire's plans to Kyle. Later, when Diane saw Kyle at the office, she told him what she overheard and that she heard Claire saying that she was going to be taking a trip to LA. Diane Jenkins was trying to be optimistic and thinks that maybe Claire is just heading to California to get some space, some time to just clear her head. Diane tries to tell Kyle, don't lose hope. Maybe this breakup is just temporary. And Claire is going to think things through and going to come back to you. However, Kyle is very worried that time apart means time for Claire to realize she doesn't really love him, and she never did. We have seen time and again that Kyle just cannot give Claire space when she asked for it. The last time she asked for space, he got a ring and proposed. So he's just not good at this. He's not patient. Later, Kyle's going to run into Claire in the park. And he brings up her trip to LA. Kyle Abbott puts 2 and 2 together and figures out that Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, is somehow involved because he's from LA. Kyle accuses Claire of dumping him so she can just go off and spend time with Holden and go to California with him. Claire is stunned, but I don't think Kyle Abbott's really far off the mark. Young and the Restless. Claire can't shake Holden. Yeah, he broke Claire's trust and he made some bad decisions, but at the same time, Claire is definitely into Holden. And he is a part of her decision-making process right now. Claire is also very insistent that this breakup is a done deal, at least for now. She did try and tell her mom and grandma that she and Holden Novak are just friends, but after she left, Victoria and Nikki were saying, no, we've both heard her talking about Holden. So they know that Claire has some interest in him, and it's not just a casual friendship. Audra Charles and Kyle Abbott. A toxic dance of rejection and revenge. At the same time that Kyle is reeling from being dumped, it looks like Audra is going to get a final dumping from Nate as well. I expect when Audra asked Nate to take her back this week, he's going to give her a Taylor Swift response. We are never ever getting back together. So that leaves Kyle and Audra both single and hurting and full of rage. Ironically, Kyle blames Audra for his breakup with Claire, and Audra blames Kyle because she lost Nate once and for all. So Kyle and Audra aren't just mad at Claire and Nate. They're also really mad at each other on Young and the Restless. When Audra and Kyle run into each other, I expect them both to salt the wounds because they're each going to know that the other one was dumped. I'm betting as word spreads that Claire dumped Kyle, we're going to see Audra taunting Kyle about it. When Audra finds out Claire went to LA with Holden, oh my goodness, I expect Audra to have some really snarky and insulting things to say about that too. Young and the Restless. Kyle and Audra still have spark. Audra will probably tell Kyle that Claire left him for someone hotter and better and more loyal. Kyle will have some pretty harsh things to say to Audra, something like, Nate Hastings is a good guy and he deserves someone better. He does not deserve to be stuck with a disloyal, lying, cheating harpy like Audra. We may see Kyle and Audra just going nuclear on one another. We already saw how bad things can get between Kyle and Audra because they were ripping into each other at the Jazz Lounge at the GCAC the other day after Kyle had been drinking. People were staring. And in the end, Sally Spectra, Courtney Hope, and Jack had to intervene to break it up and get them away from each other. So, obviously there's still passion between Kyle and Audra. It's just gone from being like a sizzling, heated passion to hatred, but it could flip back the other way soon. I think an intense and angry confrontation between Audra and Kyle could turn into some hate sex and a revenge rebound that's not about romance, but is about punishing one another for each of them losing the person they love. In his case, Claire. In her case, Nate. Young and the restless. Audra and Kyle lying to themselves, still hot for each other. We all know there's a very thin line between love and hate. With Kyle and Audra probably tearing into each other soon, those lines might blur. They might start ripping each other's clothes off in addition to ripping into each other. Clearly, there's attraction still there between Audra and Kyle. Even though they can't stand each other, I think they're still hot for each other. When they were rolling around on that bed in France, it was sizzling. They were both really into it. Kyle was, Audra was. If it wasn't for Kyle tapping the brakes, I think they both might have been naked and cheating on the people they claimed to love. Plus, Audra had been flirting up a storm with Kyle in France. And he was flirting right back. Everybody saw it. So this week it looks like Audra and Kyle finally realize they have lost Claire and Nate for good. Kyle might end up turning on Audra Charles and raging at her, and I think she'll give Kyle as good as she gets. We may soon see Audra and Kyle having a hateful fling where they fight and then fall into bed. It's like fighting is foreplay for them. There is a whole enemies to lovers vibe that's very common in romance novels and on soap operas. It's one of my favorite tropes. I can see this turning from Kyle and Audra having a secret, dirty fling to actually falling for each other. So we'll see what happens, but I think there is a lot more in simmering under the weight of secrets, betrayals, and tangled romances. But no storm was quite as incendiary as the one brewing between Kyle Abbott and Audra Hamilton. What started as a chance encounter at Crimson Lights had quickly spiraled into a whirlwind that no one, least of all the players themselves, could have anticipated. Kyle had been nursing a bruised ego and a broken heart after his messy breakup with Summer Newman. The public nature of it stung, of course, and the whispered judgments at family gatherings were impossible to ignore. He'd retreated into long hours at Jabot, burying himself in work and trying to ignore the loneliness that lurked in the corners of his penthouse. But life had a funny way of appending plans, and Audra, the vivacious and daring newcomer to the city, had just enough charm and audacity to shake Kyle out of his self-imposed exile. Their first encounter was electric. Audra had wandered into Kyle's life almost accidentally, at a Jabot event celebrating a new marketing initiative. Kyle had been nursing a drink in the corner, avoiding conversations, when she breezed up with her signature boldness, asking him what was wrong. Her eyes, a striking shade of emerald, held neither judgment nor pity, just curiosity. "Who hurt you?" she asked, sipping a glass of champagne. Kyle, used to polite pleasantries and calculated small talk, was caught off guard. He shrugged, offering nothing. But Audra was persistent, playful, and refreshingly unfiltered. "You can't just brood in the corner forever. Life's too short, and apparently, you're too handsome to be moping." It was audacious, it was brash, and it made Kyle laugh, a sound that surprised even him. In that instant, a connection sparked, the kind that didn't require explanations or histories. One innocent coffee date turned into another, and soon, what began as shared laughter and witty banter morphed into something hotter, more reckless, a rebound fling neither of them could or would deny. The chemistry was undeniable. Their kisses were urgent, their encounters thrillingly clandestine. Audra wasn't Kyle's type in the conventional sense. She wasn't the polished, socially calculated woman he was expected to date. But that was precisely why she enthralled him. She was a challenge, a distraction, and a temptation all rolled into one. Yet, as with all things in Genoa City, passion carried consequences. The fling could not remain a secret for long. Kyle's sister, Summer, caught wind of it first. Summer had been trying to regain control over her fractured life, seeking stability in her relationships and business dealings. Hearing whispers that Kyle and Audra had been spotted at a late-night art gallery together, she was incensed. "Kyle, are you serious?" she demanded, confronting him at Jabot. "Do you have any idea what this could do to our family? And me?" Kyle tried to explain, fumbling for words that wouldn't make him sound heartless. "Summer, it's not like that. I don't know. It's nothing serious. Just a rebound." Summer's eyes blazed with anger and disbelief. "Nothing serious? Kyle, this is Audra. Audra Hamilton. Everyone in this city will talk. And you're supposed to be focused on work, on your life, not on stirring up more drama." Kyle realized then that passion was rarely contained when Genoa City's gossip mill was involved. And sure enough, whispers began to ripple through social circles. At Crimson Lights, at Newman Enterprises, even at Jabot, tongues wagged and rumors spread. Audra, for her part, seemed unfazed. Bold and unapologetic, she reveled in the attention, not out of arrogance, but because she loved that Kyle's walls were coming down. Their fling grew riskier by the day. Late-night rendezvous, stolen kisses in hallways, secret texts filled with longing. These moments were intoxicating. But danger lurked around every corner. Kyle was painfully aware of the precarious balance between desire and disaster. One wrong move, one overheard conversation, could ignite a scandal that would reach the front pages of the Genoa City Chronicle. Meanwhile, Audra's presence in Kyle's life also stirred resentment in unexpected quarters. Jack Abbott, ever protective of his family, was appalled when he learned of the affair. "Kyle, this is reckless," Jack exclaimed during a tense confrontation in the Abbott penthouse. "You're supposed to have some sense, some responsibility. Audra is not. She's not someone who will protect your reputation. This isn't just about you. This is about the Abbott legacy." Kyle's defenses went up, fueled by a mix of guilt and defiance. "Jack, I know what I'm doing. I can handle it." But Jack's eyes were sharp. He had seen the damage a brief fling could wreak in Genoa City, and he knew that Audra was bold, fearless, and unpredictable. She could be a force that disrupted not just Kyle's personal life, but the delicate equilibrium of the Abbott family itself. Adding to the chaos was the reaction of Devin Hamilton, Audra's cousin and Kyle's friend. Devin had always been wary of mixing family with romantic entanglements. He warned Kyle, saying, "This might feel good now, but it's going to explode. You need to think about the fallout, not just the thrill." Kyle, caught in the heat of desire, waved off Devin's advice. Thrill outweighed reason. He was tired of playing it safe, tired of letting expectations dictate his choices. Audra awakened something in him, a wildness, a freedom, that he hadn't realized he craved. Their chemistry didn't just affect Kyle and Audra. It set off a chain reaction throughout Genoa City. Summer's fury turned into plotting. She enlisted Phyllis Summers to gather intel on the couple, knowing that a well-timed revelation could ruin Kyle's rebound before it went too far. And, of course, Newman Enterprises wasn't immune to the ripples. Victor Newman, hearing of the scandal, used it as leverage, reminding Kyle that personal mistakes had professional consequences. Yet, even as the storm raged around them, Kyle and Audra couldn't resist each other. Their encounters became bolder, more daring, each moment a defiance of societal expectations and family pressures. There was a night, in particular, that would come to define their fling. It was late, the city quiet, and Kyle's penthouse bathed in the soft glow of city lights. Audra appeared unannounced, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun alone, did you?" she teased. Kyle, exhausted from the week's drama, felt a surge of relief and desire. In that moment, the outside world ceased to exist. No gossip, no family judgment, no business consequences, just the two of them, reckless and consumed. Their passion ignited, a rebellion against the constraints of their lives, a statement that sometimes desire could not be tamed. But reality, as always, lurked just beyond the door. Summer, armed with photos she'd covertly taken, stormed the penthouse the following day. Kyle and Audra, still reeling from their night together, froze. Summer's eyes were a storm of anger and betrayal. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused?" she shouted, waving the photos like weapons. "Dad is going to flip. And you, both of you, are going to pay for this." Audra, ever fearless, faced Summer without flinching. "We're not hurting anyone. It's just fun. A little freedom in a city that demands perfection." Summer's outrage only intensified. "Fun? This is more than fun. It's reckless, it's humiliating, and it could destroy everything the Abbott family has Genoa City, casting a soft golden glow across the towering skyline. But inside the bustling Abbott mansion, the atmosphere was anything but calm. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of tension, secrets, and shifting alliances, and now it seemed the delicate balance that Claire and Kyle had tried so hard to maintain was teetering dangerously close to collapse. Claire, the fiercely determined young heiress, had been playing a careful game. Ever since Harrison's custody situation became the center of town gossip, she had been plotting, analyzing, and maneuvering behind closed doors. Her primary goal was simple but audacious. She wanted full control over her son's future. But, as is often the case in Genoa City, secrecy was a fragile commodity. And Diane Jenkins, ever the cunning player in this high-stakes game, had picked up on Claire's maneuvers, and she wasn't about to stay silent. It all began at Crimson Lights. Diane had just finished a tense conversation with a very nervous Claire. The younger woman had been cautious, but Diane could sense the underlying intensity, the strategic plotting in every carefully chosen word. "Claire," Diane had said softly with that signature half-smile that always promised trouble, "you're up to something." And I want in, or at the very least, I want to know what it is. Claire's hesitation was telling. She had always been ambitious, willing to take calculated risks, and Diane had seen enough to know that her plan involved Kyle. And Diane, who had a history of manipulating family dynamics to her advantage, knew that Kyle's involvement, or rather Kyle's ignorance, could be exploited to shake the foundation of the Newman-Abbott entanglement. By the afternoon, Diane had decided to confront Kyle. She had a quiet confidence in her stride as she entered the sleek Abbott offices, where Kyle was buried under stacks of documents and financial projections. He looked up, a mixture of curiosity and mild apprehension crossing his face. "Diane," he greeted, masking his surprise with professionalism. "What brings you here?" Diane's eyes glimmered with a mix of amusement and calculation. "Kyle," she began, leaning casually against the edge of his desk, "I think it's time we had a little chat about Claire." Kyle frowned, immediately bracing himself. There was something in Diane's tone, a dangerous, gleeful undertone, that set off alarms in his mind. "What about Claire?" he asked cautiously. "Oh, come now, Kyle," Diane said, waving a hand dismissively. "You know her better than anyone. That sweet, innocent face? It hides a mind that's sharper than you think. She's got plans, Kyle, plans that involve you, Harrison, and quite frankly your entire family legacy." Kyle's brow furrowed. He had always trusted Claire implicitly, believing that she shared his genuine intentions regarding Harrison. But Diane's words planted a seed of doubt, one that began to grow almost instantly. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "Claire wouldn't. She wouldn't do anything without telling me." Diane chuckled softly, a sound that carried the weight of secrets and mischief. "That's just it, Kyle. She isn't telling you. I've seen the way she's maneuvering, quietly, strategically, every move calculated to ensure her victory. And it's not just about what's best for Harrison. It's about control. And Kyle, I think you deserve to know before it's too late." Kyle's stomach twisted. He wanted to dismiss Diane's warning, to believe that Claire's intentions were pure. But deep down, he knew Diane had a knack for reading people, especially when it came to schemers and manipulators. He couldn't ignore her completely. "Okay," he said cautiously, leaning back in his chair. "Tell me what you know." Diane's lips curled into that signature smirk. "Claire is planning to push for sole custody, Kyle. She's been consulting with lawyers, making sure she has the perfect case lined up. She wants to ensure that Harrison remains under her control at all costs. And she's not planning to do this quietly. She wants you to be blindsided, to be caught off guard. She's counting on your trust to keep her plan under wraps until the final moment." Kyle's mind reeled. The room seemed to shrink around him as the weight of Diane's revelation sank in. He had known Claire was ambitious, but this felt like a betrayal. His thoughts raced. Why wouldn't she tell me? Has she been manipulating me all along? Does she really think I'm just a pawn in her game? What should I do?" he asked finally, his voice tight with tension. "I can't just confront her without knowing for sure. And I can't just sit back while she makes moves behind my back." Diane's eyes sparkled with triumph. She had expected this reaction. "Kyle, that's the beauty of it. You've got options. You can confront her, sure, but then you risk alienating her. Or you can observe, gather evidence, and be strategic in your response. Don't let her catch you off guard. Be the one controlling the narrative for once." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, the weight of responsibility pressing heavily on his shoulders. Diane was right. Claire had always been a formidable adversary, not just in the courtroom, but in the delicate, tangled web of relationships that made up Genoa City. But this was Harrison, his son. He couldn't afford to be manipulated or blindsided. Not now, not ever. Later that evening, Kyle confronted Claire at her loft. The tension was palpable. Claire had been preparing for the evening with her usual meticulousness, unaware that Diane had already sown seeds of doubt in Kyle's mind. He entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, keeping his voice calm but firm. Claire looked up, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Of course, Kyle. What's on your mind?" Kyle studied her carefully, searching for any hint of deceit. "I heard some things today," he began cautiously. "Things about your plans about Harrison." Claire's brow furrowed slightly, though she remained composed. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice steady. Kyle took a deep breath. "Diane told me you're planning to push for sole custody. That you've been meeting with lawyers, making moves behind my back." For a moment, Claire's expression faltered. Then, almost imperceptibly, a steely resolve took its place. "Kyle," she said softly, "you know me. Everything I do for Harrison. I want what's best for him. And sometimes, that means making difficult decisions that others might not understand. Kyle's heart sank. He wanted to believe her, but the doubt Diane had planted was like a shadow, creeping over every corner of his mind. I want to trust you, Claire. But I can't help feeling like I'm being left out of something important. Claire stepped closer, reaching for his hand. Kyle, you are important. Harrison needs both of us. But you also have to understand that sometimes protecting him means keeping certain things quiet until the right moment. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to safeguard our son's future. Kyle's grip on her hand tightened. He wanted to believe her, and part of him did, but Diane's words still echoed in his mind. She's counting on your trust to keep her through the tall windows of the Grand Phoenix Hotel, casting long shadows across the polished lobby. Claire Abbott, clutching her designer tote, made her way toward the elevators, her mind a tangle of conflicting emotions. She had flown to New York to meet a potential investor for the Newman-Abbott merger, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Holden. She couldn't shake him, no matter how hard she tried. It had started innocently enough. Holden, a charming consultant with a reputation for both brilliance and danger, had arrived in Genoa City a few months ago under the guise of advising on a confidential corporate project. But somewhere between boardroom presentations and private dinners, he had wormed his way into Claire's thoughts. His easy smile, the intensity in his eyes, the way he seemed to read her before she even spoke, it had all been intoxicating. Claire tried to focus on her career, the family legacy she was determined to uphold, and the merger that could redefine Abbott Enterprises. But every time she sat across from him, the world seemed to narrow, leaving only the two of them. And she hated that. The elevator dinged, snapping her from her thoughts. She stepped in, pressing the button for the conference floor. The reflection in the glass doors caught her off guard. She was impeccably dressed, navy sheath pearls, perfectly styled hair, but inside she felt exposed. Vulnerable. As if Holden's presence had left a residue she couldn't wash away. Claire! The voice made her jump. She turned, expecting a hotel staff member, only to find herself face to face with Holden himself. He was leaning casually against the wall, his trademark smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Didn't expect to see me here. Claire's heart skipped a beat. Holden, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, he replied smoothly, stepping closer. There was that familiar heat in his gaze, the way it made her pulse quicken. I thought you were in New York for the investor meetings. I was, she said, forcing herself to sound composed. But things change. Indeed they do. His eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. I wanted to see you. Claire's breath caught. She told herself to remain calm, to maintain her professional distance. But her body betrayed her. The corners of her mouth lifted, despite her best efforts, and her resolve wavered. Holden had a way of making the impossible feel effortless, like he had entered her mind without permission. They rode the elevator in silence, the tension palpable. Claire's mind raced. Why was he here? Was it a coincidence, or was he deliberately following her? And more importantly, why did she care? Later that evening, Claire sat in her suite, staring at the city lights twinkling against the night sky. She poured herself a glass of wine, trying to calm the storm inside her. She knew she shouldn't let Holden get to her. He was unpredictable, alluring, and dangerous, a combination that spelled trouble. But every time she thought of him, she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her phone buzzed. A message from Holden. Can we talk? Now. I need to explain. Claire stared at the screen, conflicted. She wanted to ignore it. She wanted to maintain her composure. But the magnetic pull she felt toward him was too strong to resist. She typed back, her fingers trembling. Fine. Meet me in the lobby. Within minutes, Holden was there, waiting as if no time had passed. His presence was overwhelming, and Claire felt a shiver run down her spine. Claire, he began, his voice low and urgent. I didn't mean to intrude earlier. I needed to see you. She folded her arms, trying to shield herself from the intensity of his gaze. Holden, you can't just appear whenever you want. I have responsibilities, people depending on me. I know, he said, taking a careful step closer. And that's why I'm here. Because I can't ignore what's happening between us, Claire. You can't either. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She had tried to ignore it, tried to push away the growing connection between them. But hearing him say it aloud made her pulse race. He was right, she couldn't ignore it. Holden, this is complicated, she said, her voice wavering. I have a family. A legacy. My life isn't mine alone. And yet here you are, he countered, his voice softening. Thinking about me, unable to push me out of your mind. Admit it, Claire. You feel it too. Her resolve crumbled. She looked down, unable to meet his gaze. He had a way of stripping away her defenses, exposing the raw vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. "I do," she admitted quietly. Holden reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The touch sent an electric jolt through her body. "Then let's not fight it," he whispered. Claire shook her head, torn between desire and duty. "I can't. Not fully. There's too much at stake." He sighed, a mixture of frustration and longing in his expression. "I understand. But I'm not going anywhere, Claire. You might try to push me away, but I'll be here, waiting." The next few days were a torturous dance of proximity and distance. Claire found herself seeing Holden in every corner of her life. At a corporate luncheon, he appeared as if summoned by some invisible force. At the Abbott estate, he lingered near the edge of family gatherings, his gaze always finding hers. Each encounter left her breathless, heart-pounding, and yet guilty for indulging in feelings she wasn't supposed to have. Even her children noticed her distraction. Summer and Daniel had begun to tease her, noticing the faraway look in her eyes. "Mom," Summer said one evening, a mischievous glint in her eye, "you're thinking about him again, aren't you?" Claire froze. "Summer," she exclaimed, caught off guard. Daniel chuckled. "Come on, Mom. We know when you're smitten. Just admit it." She laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "It's complicated," she said. They exchanged knowing glances, understanding more than Claire wanted to admit. Holden had become a part of her thoughts in a way that was impossible to ignore. She loved her children, and her family always came first, but Holden's presence had awakened a part of her that had lain dormant for years. One night, Claire found herself at the edge of the marina, staring out at the water, the city lights reflecting like scattered diamonds. Holden appeared silently beside her, the familiar warmth of his presence settling around her like a blanket. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, though she didn't move away. "I had to see you," he said simply. "I can't keep pretending I don't care." Claire's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to fight it, to maintain control over her life, but the pull between them was too strong. "Holden, this can't happen," she said, her voice breaking. "Why not?" he asked, his hand brushing hers. "Because of your family? Because of your responsibilities? Or because you're scared of what you really want?" The honesty in his voice cut through her defenses. She realized that she had been running, not from Holden, but from herself, from the desire she had buried under layers of obligation and propriety. I don't know if I can," she admitted, voice trembling. "You don't have to decide now," he said, taking her hands in his. "Just know that I'm here, and I'm not leaving."